reviewing the latest royalty statement from TechCorp Industries. The numbers were staggering as they had been for the past 5 years. The Phoenix algorithm, his creation, his baby, had revolutionized predictive analytics in the tech industry. Every quarter, the deposits came like clockwork. This quarter, $12.3 million. His lawyer, Raul O'Connell, had structured the intellectual property agreement brilliantly. Alexander owned the algorithm outright. Companies licensed it. At 42, Alexander looked younger than his years. Regular gym sessions had kept him fit, and his salt and pepper hair gave him a distinguished appearance. But it was his eyes, sharp, calculating, always observing, that revealed his true nature. He was a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos, solutions where others saw problems. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter, Abby. "Dad, Mom insists you come to Christmas dinner at Grandma's. Says it's important for family unity. She'll be bringing Garrett. Please come for me. Christmas tree." Alexander's jaw tightened. Garrett Cole. The name alone made his blood pressure spike. Tanya's new husband of 6 months. A mid-level marketing executive at TechCorp who strutted around like he owned the world. Alexander had done his research. Of course, Garrett was everything Alexander wasn't. Loud, flashy, desperate for attention. He drove a lease Mercedes, wore expensive suits he couldn't truly afford, and posted incessantly on social media about his executive lifestyle. The irony wasn't lost on Alexander. Garrett worked for TechCorp, the same TechCorp that paid Alexander millions for the Phoenix algorithm. The same algorithm that Garrett's entire department used for their marketing analytics. Garrett had no idea. But there was something else Alexander had discovered during his quiet investigation into his ex-wife's new husband. Garrett had been presenting the algorithm's insights as his own innovative strategies. Internal memos, presentations to the board. All of it painted Garrett as some kind of marketing genius when he was simply reading the outputs Alexander's creation generated. Alexander replied to Abby, "I'll be there, sweetheart. Wouldn't miss it." He walked to his window, watching the December snow fall over the city. The past 3 years hadn't been about bitterness. They'd been about building. While Tanya had monkey-branched from their marriage to Garrett, Alexander had focused on his work, his daughter, and his investments. The Phoenix algorithm had made him wealthy beyond measure, but more importantly, it had given him independence. His mind drifted back to MIT, where he'd met Stuart Collins in their sophomore year. They'd been roommates, best friends, coding partners who pulled countless all-nighters fueled by pizza and energy drinks. Stuart had gone the corporate route, climbing the ladder at TechCorp until he became CEO 5 years ago. Alexander had chosen the freelance path, consulting, creating, owning his work rather than selling his soul to a corporation. Stuart had been the one to license the Phoenix algorithm for TechCorp, offering Alexander a deal that was almost too generous. $50 million up front, plus 3% of all revenue generated using the algorithm. Stuart knew genius when he saw it. That algorithm had generated over $2 billion for TechCorp in 5 years. Alexander picked up his phone and dialed, "Alex, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Stuart's warm voice came through. "Just thinking about old times, Stu. How's everything at Tech Corporation? Crazy as always. We're preparing for the Q4 board meeting. The Phoenix algorithm continues to be our golden goose. I keep telling the board, we need to build a statue of you in the lobby." Alexander chuckled. "I'm sure the shareholders would love that. Hey, quick question. Do you know a Garrett Cole in your marketing department?" There was a pause. "Cole? Yeah, he's one of our marketing managers. Why do you ask?" "Just curious. I'll explain later. Listen, any chance you're free for Christmas? Actually, the board meeting got moved to the 26th, so I'm stuck in town." "What?" "My ex-wife is hosting Christmas dinner at her mother's place. Bringing her new husband. Thought you might enjoy the entertainment." Stuart laughed. "Tanya's new husband. This I've got to see. Text me the details." After hanging up, Alexander allowed himself a small smile. The pieces were falling into place. Chapter 2. The Gathering Storm. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and bitter cold. Alexander dressed carefully. A charcoal cashmere sweater, dark jeans, and his vintage Rolex, a gift from Stuart when the TechCorp deal had closed. He looked successful, but not showy, comfortable, but not casual. Abby had texted him throughout the day, clearly anxious about the dinner. At 19, she was home from Northwestern for winter break, studying computer science, much to Alexander's pride and Tanya's confusion. His daughter had inherited his analytical mind and thankfully his temperament. "Dad. Garrett's already being insufferable. He's showing everyone his company car and talking about his executive achievements. Mom's eating it up. Grandma looks ready to murder someone. Alexander smiled. Tanya's mother, Mercedes Hooper, had never approved of the divorce. She'd called Tanya a fool for leaving a good man for a peacock. Mercedes was a sharp-tongued woman in her 70s who'd built her own successful catering business and had no patience for pretenders. He arrived at Mercedes's sprawling Victorian home in Evanston at 6 o'clock sharp. The house blazed with Christmas lights and through the windows he could see people moving about. He grabbed the wine he brought, a $500 bottle of Chateau Margaux, not to show off, but because Mercedes appreciated quality, and headed to the door. Abby opened it before he could knock, throwing her arms around him. "Thank God you're here. It's been awful." She looked like her mother, but had Alexander's eyes. Observant, intelligent. She wore a simple red dress and had her dark hair pulled back. "That bad?" Alexander murmured. "Worse? Come on." The house was filled with extended family. Mercedes's annual Christmas gathering typically hosted 25 to 30 people. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and friends who become family over the years. The dining room table was already set for a feast. Mercedes spotted him immediately and made her way over, elegant in a green velvet dress. "Alexander. Finally, someone with sense arrives." She kissed his cheek and took the wine. "Chateau Margaux, you spoil me. Only the best for you, Mercedes." "Unlike some people who bring grocery store champagne and expect praise," she said pointedly, her eyes flicking toward the living room where Garrett's booming laugh echoed. Alexander followed her gaze and saw him for the first time in person. Garrett Cole was tall, athletic in a gym rat kind of way, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a spray tan that looked orange in the warm lighting. He wore a designer suit that screamed trying too hard and was holding court with several family members, gesturing wildly as he told some story. Tanya stood beside him, laughing at everything he said. She'd changed since the divorce. More makeup, tighter clothes. Her auburn hair dyed a lighter shade. She looked like someone trying to recapture youth rather than aging gracefully. "And then I told the VP, if you want innovation, you got to take risks. They implemented my strategy and boom, 30% increase in Q3. That's what real leadership looks like." Garrett's voice carried across the room. Alexander felt Abby tense beside him. "He's been like this for an hour," she whispered. "Don't worry," Alexander said calmly. "Let him talk." Mercedes squeezed his arm. "Dinner's at 7. Try not to break anything before then." She winked and headed back to the kitchen. Alexander made his rounds, greeting relatives he hadn't seen in months. Everyone asked about his work with genuine interest, though he kept his answers vague, consulting, mostly, keeping busy. No one needed to know about the millions sitting in his accounts. At 6:45, his phone buzzed outside. "This is going to be good." Alexander stepped out onto the porch and found Stuart leaning against a black Tesla, grinning. Stuart had aged well too. Same sharp features, though his hairline had receded slightly. He wore an expensive wool coat and carried a bottle of Dominone. "Alex, you look good. Life after divorce suits you." They embraced briefly. "You look like a CEO. It suits you. So where's this new husband of Tanya's? I'm dying to meet the man who thinks he's hot inside, regaling everyone with tales of his brilliance. Fair warning, he works for you." Stuart's eyebrows shot up. "You're kidding. Garrett Cole is Tanya's new husband. Small world, isn't it?" Stuart started laughing. "Oh, this is too good. The clown has been submitting reports claiming he's developed proprietary analytical strategies. I've seen his presentations. He's literally just copying Phoenix outputs and rebranding them as his insights." "I know. I've seen them, too." Stuart's expression shifted from amusement to understanding. "You're planning something." "Just planning to enjoy Christmas dinner with family." Alexander's smile was enigmatic. "I know that. Look, you're about to destroy someone. Would I do that at Christmas dinner? Absolutely. And I wouldn't miss it for the world. What do you need from me?" Alexander's smile widened. "Just follow my lead and maybe keep your phone handy." They walked inside together and the energy in the room shifted immediately. Several people recognized Stuart from TechCore's frequent media appearances. The boy genius CEO who'd taken a struggling company and turned it into a tech giant. Garrett noticed too. His eyes lit up with the desperation of a social climber spotting an opportunity. Chapter 3. The calm before dinner was called and everyone moved to the expansive dining room. Mercedes had outdone herself. Roasted turkey, glazed ham, 7 different side dishes, and enough desserts to feed an army. The table was set with her fine china and crystal glasses. Alexander found himself seated between Abby and Stuart, directly across from Tanya and Garrett. Perfect. Garrett had been trying to get Stoyart's attention since they'd arrived, but Stoyart had smoothly deflected, staying close to Alexander and catching up. Now trapped at the dinner table, Garrett saw his opportunity. "Mr. Collins, I didn't know you'd be here. I'm Garrett Cole, marketing manager at Tech Corporation. I've been with the company for 3 years." Stewart looked up from his plate, his expression politely neutral. "Garrett? Yes, I've seen your name on some reports." Garrett puffed up like a peacock. "I've been working on some really innovative strategies for our Q4 push. The analytics have been phenomenal. I'd love to discuss them with you sometime. Maybe over golf." "I don't golf," Stoyart said flatly, turning back to his conversation with Alexander. Tanya jumped in, her voice sharp. "Garrett's being modest. He's the one who developed the new marketing framework everyone's talking about. His boss says he's on track for VP." Alexander sipped his wine, saying nothing. Abby kicked him gently under the table. A warning or encouragement, he wasn't sure which. Garrett's attention shifted to Alexander for the first time. "Alex, right? Tanya's mentioned you. You do computers or something?" "Something like that." Alexander replied evenly. "It's a tough field. Lots of competition. I imagine you're scrambling for clients, especially in this economy." Garrett's tone was dripping with condescension. Several people at the table shifted uncomfortably. Mercedes Fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "I manage," Alexander said. Tanya laughed. "A brittle mean sound. Alex does freelance consulting. He worked from home. It's very flexible." The implication was clear. Alexander was struggling while Garrett was thriving. Garrett leaned back, warming to his audience. "You know what, Alex? I can maybe put in a good word for you at Tech Corporation. We're always looking for junior developers. The pay isn't great to start, but it's steady. Better than chasing contracts." The table went silent. Mercedes looked ready to intervene, but Alexander caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. "That's generous, Garrett. But I'm quite happy with my current arrangement." "Pride's a dangerous thing, buddy. You've got to be realistic. I mean, what are you really making from freelancing? 40-50 grand a year? Meanwhile, Tech Corp just gave me a year-end bonus that could buy a car." Garrett smirked. Stewart coughed into his wine. Alexander could see him fighting laughter. Abby spoke up, her voice cold. "Dad's doing just fine, Garrett. Maybe we should talk about something else. I'm just trying to help, sweetie. Your dad's too proud to admit he's struggling. I see it all the time. Guys his age who can't adapt to the changing tech landscape. They get left behind." Tanya placed her hand on Garrett's arm. "Garrett's right. Alexander, you should really consider it. Stable income benefits. Maybe you could finally upgrade from that tiny loft." Alexander's loft was 3,000 square feet of prime downtown real estate worth $2.5 million, but he didn't correct her. Mercedes had heard enough. "Perhaps we should." Garrett interrupted her. No, it's fine. I'm just being honest. Alex seems like a nice enough guy, just stuck in the past. The world's moved on. You need to be aggressive, innovative. That's why I'm succeeding at Tech Corp. I don't just follow orders. I create solutions. I'm a thought leader." Stewart's jaw twitched. Alexander placed a subtle hand on his arm. "A thought leader?" Alexander repeated. "Interesting. Tell me, Garrett, what's your biggest innovation at Tech Corp?" Garrett's chest puffed up again. "The Phoenix implementation strategy. I developed a framework for utilizing advanced predictive analytics to optimize marketing spend across 17 different channels simultaneously. Increased ROI by 32%. The board was blown away. My VP said it was the most innovative approach he'd seen in 15 years. Stewart was gripping his wine glass so hard Alexander thought it might shatter. "The Phoenix implementation strategy," Alexander said slowly. "Catchy name. I'm good with branding. It's about understanding the technology and making it work for you. Most people just see numbers. I see opportunities. And this technology you're using, where did it come from?" Garrett waved his hand dismissively. "Some external contractor developed the base algorithm years ago. But the real genius isn't how you apply it. That's where I come in. The contractor just wrote code. I turned it into a business strategy." "Some contractor," Alexander murmured. Tanya jumped back in, sensing an opportunity to twist the knife. "See, Alexander, this is what success looks like. Garrett's going places. He's already being considered for regional director. We just bought a house in Lincoln Park. 4 bedrooms, completely renovated." "Congratulations," Alexander said genuinely. "I'm sure you'll be very happy there." His calm response seemed to irritate Tanya. She'd expected hurt or jealousy. Garrett, emboldened by wine and ego, pressed on. "You know what, Alex? I feel bad for you sitting here watching your ex-wife thrive with a real man, knowing you couldn't provide for her the way I can. I've got to sting. The table erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Abby stood up. That's enough, Garrett. Sit down. Abigail. Tanya snapped. Garrett's just being honest. Mercedes stood as well. In my house, we treat guests with respect. Garrett stood, swaying slightly. The wine had gone to his head. Respect? This broke loser shows up to family dinner like he belongs here. He couldn't keep his wife happy. Can't hold down a real job. And he's sitting next to my boss trying to what? Network. It's pathetic. He grabbed his wine glass and before anyone could react, threw the contents across the table. Red wine splashed across Alexander's face and sweater, dripping onto Mercedes's antique tablecloth. The room exploded. Mercedes started shouting. Abby was crying. Family members jumped up, but Alexander simply sat there, wine dripping from his face, perfectly calm. He pulled out his handkerchief and carefully wiped his face. Then he looked at Stoyart, who was staring at Garrett with undisguised fury. Stuart, Alexander said quietly. Maybe now would be a good time for that phone call. Stuart pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with rage. With pleasure. Chapter 4. The first crack. The chaos continued around them as Alexander calmly wiped wine from his face. Garrett stood triumphantly, Tanya's hand on his arm. Both of them smirking as if they'd won some victory. The rest of the family looked horrified. Mercedes grabbed a towel and rushed Alexander. I'm so sorry. This is unforgivable. It's fine, Mercedes. Really? Alexander's voice was steady, almost serene. He looked at Garrett. Feel better now? Actually, yeah, I do. Someone needed to put you in your place. Garrett's confidence was at its peak. He turned to Stuart. Mr. Collins, I apologize you had to witness this family drama. Some people just can't handle being around successful individuals. Stuart stood slowly and there was something dangerous in his posture. Garrett, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Of course, sir. Like I said, I'd love to discuss my performance review. You're fired. The room went silent. Even the relatives who'd been cleaning up the wine spill froze. Garrett laughed nervously. I'm sorry. What? You're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will box up your desk on the 26th. Your access cards will be deactivated tonight. You have 30 days to remove yourself from company health insurance. The color drained from Garrett's face. You can't. This is a joke. Mr. Collins, I'm one of your best performers. You're a fraud. Stuart's voice was ice. You've been claiming credit for work you didn't do. Presenting insights generated by proprietary technology as your own innovations and systematically lying to your superiors about your contributions. That's grounds for termination and possibly legal action. Tanya stood up. This is ridiculous. You're firing him because he threw wine at your friend. That's abuse of power. I'm firing him because he's a thief and a liar. Stuart turned to Alexander. Alex, would you like to explain or should I? Alexander stood brushing wine drops off his sweater. He looked at Garrett with something close to pity. The Phoenix algorithm, the external contractor. Who developed it? That was me. Garrett's face went from pale to gray. That's your lying. Am I? Alexander pulled out his phone and opened his email. Here's the original licensing agreement between myself and Tech Corp signed 5 years ago. $50 million upfront payment plus 3% of all revenue generated using the algorithm. Stuart, how much revenue has Phoenix generated for Tech Corp? Approximately $2.1 billion, Stuart replied. Abi's eyes went wide. She'd known her father was comfortable. But this, Alexander continued, his voice calm, but carrying to every corner of the room. That means I've received roughly $113 million in royalty payments over 5 years. This quarter alone, I made $12.3 million. The algorithm you've been claiming as the foundation of your innovations, I own it. Every single line of code. Tanya sat down heavily, her face, ashen. But here's the thing, Garrett. I didn't mind you using it. That's what it's for. Companies license it to improve their business. What I do mind is you presenting its outputs as your own genius. You've been telling people you developed the Phoenix implementation strategy when really you've just been reading the reports my algorithm generates and repackaging them. Garrett's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I added value. I interpreted the data. You copied and pasted. Stuart interjected. I pulled your reports this afternoon after Alex called me. 87% of your innovative strategies are word for word from Phoenix outputs. You've been committing intellectual property fraud. Everyone uses the algorithm. Garrett's voice was desperate now, looking around the table for support and finding none. Everyone uses it and credits it properly. Stewart said, they don't claim they invented the insights. You presented yourself to the board as the creator of novel methodologies. You've been lying to collect bonuses and promotions based on someone else's work. Alexander's phone buzz. He glanced at it and smiled slightly. Ah, here we go. That's my lawyer, Raul O'Onnell. I forwarded him Garrett's internal presentations earlier this week. He's confirmed we have grounds for a lawsuit for unauthorized appropriation of proprietary intellectual property and fraud. Garrett stumbled backward. You're suing me? Not yet. That depends on how cooperative you are. Alexander's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You have two choices, Garrett. Option 1, you sign a statement admitting to the fraud. Return all bonuses received based on false performance claims. I believe it's roughly $85,000 over the past 18 months and agreeing never to work in tech analytics again. You do this quietly and we don't pursue legal action. Or Garrett's voice was barely a whisper, or we go to court. I have documentation of every instance where you claimed credit for Phoenix-generated insights. I have emails where you explicitly told colleagues you developed these strategies yourself. I have internal memos where you pitch yourself for promotion based on innovations that were actually my algorithm's outputs. In court, this becomes public record. Your name gets attached to fraud. You become unhireable in any professional capacity, Stewart added. And Tech Corp will pursue its own legal action for the bonuses paid under false pretenses. We take intellectual property very seriously. Garrett looked at Tanya desperately. She was staring at Alexander like she was seeing him for the first time. How long have you known? She whispered. Alexander turned to her. That he worked for Tech Corporation since you started dating. That he was committing fraud. About 6 months ago, Stewart and I have been documenting everything. And you just waited. I waited for the right moment. You wanted to parade him in front of our family, show everyone how much better off you were. I thought it was only fair to let the truth come out in the same venue. Mercedes was smiling behind her napkin, enjoying this far more than she probably should. Garrett found his voice again. You did this for revenge because Tanya left you? That's pathetic. No, Alexander said calmly. I did this because you threw wine in my face and called me a broke loser in front of my daughter and family. The revenge was already planned. That just determined the timing. He looked around the table at the stunned faces. For 3 years, I've watched Tanya post on social media about her successful new life with her executive husband. I've listened to Abby tell me stories about Garrett's arrogance and condescension. I've seen the way you both looked down on me, pitted me, assumed I was struggling, and I said nothing because I didn't care. My success doesn't require an audience. But tonight, you made it personal. You humiliated me in front of people I care about. So, yes, Garrett, I planned this. I've been planning it for months, and it's not over yet. Chapter 5. The depths revealed. The room remained frozen. Everyone processing what they just witnessed. Garrett stood there, his expensive suit now looking like a costume, his carefully crafted image crumbling. Tanya finally found her voice. You've been rich this whole time. While I was struggling with a mortgage, asking you for help with Abi's tuition, you were sitting on millions. Alexander's expression hardened. I paid Abi's tuition in full all 4 years, plus her housing. I've never missed a single payment to you, Tanya. The divorce settlement gave you the house, half our savings, and alimony until you remarried, which you did 6 months ago and in my obligation. I've been more than fair. Fair? You let me think you were barely scraping by. I never lied to you. You assumed there's a difference. He turned to Abby. Did you know I was struggling? Abby shook her head, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. You paid for everything. You took me on vacation to Italy last summer. You bought me a car for my 18th birthday. I knew you were doing well, but she looked at Garrett with disgust. I tried to tell them. I told Mom you were successful, but she didn't want to hear it because she wanted to believe her own narrative, Mercedes said sharply. That she traded up that Garrett was the better man. Pride is a terrible thing, Tanya. Stewart's phone rang. He looked at the screen and smiled coldly. It's our head of legal. Excuse me. He stepped into the hallway. Garrett seemed to be having trouble breathing. My career? You destroyed my career over wine? No. Alexander corrected. You destroyed your career by being a fraud. I just expedited the timeline. Eventually, someone at Tech Corp would have noticed that your genius strategies dried up the moment the algorithm updated or changed. You were always going to get caught, Garrett. I just made sure it happened in front of the people who needed to see who you really are. He looked at Tanya, and that includes your wife. Tanya's hands were shaking. The The mortgage on the new house. Garrett said his promotion would cover it, but now there's no promotion, no job, no bonuses to return. Alexander's voice wasn't cruel, just factual. You overextended based on future earnings that were built on fraud. That's not my problem, Tanya. Stewart returned and his expression was grim satisfaction. Legal just confirmed something interesting. Garrett, you signed an intellectual property agreement when you joined Tech Corp. It explicitly states that any work product, any innovations, any strategies developed using company resources or proprietary technology must be properly attributed. You violated that agreement systematically. They can't prove. We can't. We've been tracking algorithm usage. Every time someone runs a Phoenix query, it's logged. We match your reports to query timestamps. 93% of the time, you ran a Phoenix analysis within 48 hours of submitting a new strategy. The correlation is undeniable. Garrett sat down heavily, his head in his hands. But Alexander wasn't done. He pulled out a folder from his bag. He brought it knowing this moment would come. There's more, Garrett. I've been very thorough. He slid several photographs across the table. These are from the Tech Corp Leadership Conference in Miami last September. You told Tanya you were at a training seminar. Tanya grabbed the photos, her face going white. They showed Garrett at a beachside bar with a blonde woman kissing her, his hand on her waist. Her name is Fa Haney. She's a sales rep from your Miami branch. You've been seeing her for 7 months since before your wedding to Tanya. Tanya's hand flew to her mouth. You said that conference was mandatory, that spouses couldn't attend. Garrett's head snapped up. You had me investigated. You had me followed. I hired a discreet investigator. Yes. Once I knew you were committing fraud at Tech Corp, I wanted to know what else you were lying about. Turns out quite a lot. Alexander pulled out more documents. You're also underwater on your Mercedes lease. You're 3 months behind on payments. Your credit score is $580. You have $67,000 in credit card debt. Most of it from trying to maintain the appearance of success. The designer suits, the expensive dinners, the watch you're wearing, all bought on credit you can't afford. Tanya was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and humiliation. The house he just bought. Garrett put down 3% with an adjustable rate mortgage because it was the only way you qualified. When his promotion didn't increase his income enough, he planned to refinance using Tech Corp stock options he claimed were coming. Stock options that were predicated on his innovative performance that was fraudulent. Mercedes whistled low. You're not just a fraud, boy. You're a disaster. Stewart looked at Alexander with newfound respect. Remind me never to piss you off. This is insane, Garrett shouted, standing up again. You can't just destroy someone's life like this. You destroyed your own life, Alexander said quietly. I just documented it. Every piece of information I've shared tonight is a matter of record. The fraud, the debt, the affair, all real, all your choices. I didn't create these problems, Garrett. You did. He stood and addressed the room. I came here tonight knowing this would happen. I've known for months. I could have handled this quietly. Sent the evidence to Stewart. Let him fire Garrett. Let the marriage implode on its own. But Garrett made it clear how he sees people he considers beneath him. The contempt, the cruelty, the casual humiliation that needed to be answered publicly. Abby stood and hugged her father tightly. I'm so proud of you, Dad. Over her shoulder. Alexander looked at Tanya. You left me because you said I was too passive, too quiet, too unwilling to fight for what I wanted. You wanted someone aggressive, someone who projected power. Well, you got him. How's that working out? Tanya couldn't speak. She'd just stare at the photos of Garrett with another woman, her world collapsing. Chapter 6. The Choice. Stewart cleared his throat. Garrett, I need your decision. Sign the admission and return the bonuses or we proceed with legal action. You have 60 seconds. Garrett looked around wildly as if searching for an escape route. His eyes landed on Alexander. What do you want? Money? I don't have it, but I can get it. I don't want any money, Garrett. I want you to understand consequences. You spent your entire adult life taking credit for other people's work, lying to get ahead, projecting confidence without substance. And it worked until tonight. This is what happens when the truth catches up. Please. Garrett's voice broke. I made mistakes. Okay. I shouldn't have said those things. Shouldn't have thrown the wine. I'm sorry. Are you sorry you did it? Or sorry you got caught? Alexander's voice was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Gar had no answer. Stewart held out a tablet with a document on screen. This is the admission. It states that you knowingly claimed credit for insights generated by licensed proprietary technology, that you misrepresented your contributions to Tech Corp leadership, and that you agree to return all performance bonuses received based on these false claims. Sign it and we handle this internally. Refuse, and it becomes a matter for the courts. 30 seconds, Stewart added. Garrett's hand trembled as he took the tablet. He looked at Tanya, who was still staring at the photos of his affair, tears streaming down her face. He looked at the family members watching with expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction. He looked at Alexander, standing there calm and collected. The man he called a broke loser, now revealed as a multimillionaire who'd orchestrated his complete destruction. I'll sign, he whispered. Louder, Stoyart said. I'll sign. Garrett's voice was stronger now, defeated, but clear. He scrolled his signature on the screen and handed the tablet back. Stewart forwarded the document immediately. Done. TechCorp legal team has it. You'll receive official termination papers and a repayment schedule within 48 hours. Garrett slumped back into his chair broken. But Alexander still wasn't finished. He turned to Tanya. I want you to understand something. I didn't do this to get back at you for leaving. People fall out of love. Marriages end. I was hurt, but I moved on. I did this because of how you've treated me since the divorce. The social media posts mocking my simple life. The comments to Abby about how I couldn't provide for her the way Garrett could. The pitying looks at school functions when you'd show up in designer clothes while I wore jeans and a sweater. Tanya's voice was hoarse. You were always so quiet about money. I thought you thought what you wanted to think. You needed to believe you'd made the right choice in leaving. So, you constructed a narrative where I was struggling and Garrett was thriving. But you never actually asked, Tanya. Not once in 3 years did you ask how I was really doing. Mercedes stood and started clearing dishes, signaling that the dinner portion of the evening was effectively over. Family members began helping, glad for something to do with their hands. While processing the drama, Alexander pulled Abby aside. I'm sorry you had to see this. Don't be. She wiped her eyes. I'm glad it happened. Garrett's been horrible to you for months, and Mom just encouraged it. They both needed to see that their actions have consequences. You're wise beyond your years. I learned from the best. She hugged him again. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about the algorithm money? Because I wanted you to understand the value of education and hard work on its own merits, not because of what it might earn you. Money is a tool, Abby, not an identity. Garrett made money his identity, and look what happened when it was taken away. He collapsed. I wanted you to build yourself on something more solid. Stewart joined them. That was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed, and I've been in hostile boardroom takeovers. Remind me to send you a fruit basket. Alexander smiled. It wasn't about being savage. It was about being thorough. Is there anything else? Stewart asked. Any other revelations coming? One more thing, Alexander said, looking toward the living room where Garrett and Tanya were having a hushed, furious argument. But that's between them now. My work here is done. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The argument between Garrett and Tanya had moved to Mercedes's front porch. Their raised voices carrying through the cold December air. Through the window, Alexander could see them. Garrett gesturing wildly, Tanya crying and shouting, both of them unraveling. Inside, Mercedes was serving dessert to those who remained, though the festive mood had long since evaporated. Most of the extended family had found excuses to leave early, uncomfortable with the confrontation they'd witnessed. Stewart pulled Alexander aside near the fireplace. I have to know. Was the affair really just something you discovered? Or did you set that up, too? Alexander's expression gave nothing away. Garrett set that up himself. I just documented it. But the investigator was in Miami specifically during that conference. I had reason to suspect Garrett's business trips weren't entirely business. The investigator confirmed it. If there'd been no affair, I wouldn't have manufactured one. Stewart shook his head in admiration. You've changed, Alex. The guy I knew at MIT would have just walked away from this whole situation. The guy you knew at MIT didn't have a daughter watching him. Abby needed to see that quiet doesn't mean weak. That being smart and patient is more powerful than being loud and aggressive. Well, mission accomplished. That girl looks at you like you hung the moon. Stewart paused. What happens now with Garrett? I mean, the repayment schedule for the bonuses is going to bury him, especially without a job. That's between him and TechCorp legal team. Though I imagine bankruptcy is in his future in the algorithm fraud lawsuit. I meant what I said. If he cooperates, we won't pursue it. I have no interest in destroying him beyond what he's already done to himself. But I needed the threat to be real for him to sign that admission. The front door opened and Garrett stumbled back in. his face red and blotchy. Tanya followed, her makeup ruined by tears. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Garrett walked directly to Alexander. For a moment, Stuart tensed, ready to intervene if things got physical. But Garrett just stood there, deflated. "I need to know," Garrett said quietly. "If I hadn't thrown the wine, if I hadn't said those things, would you still have done this?" Alexander considered the question eventually, but it would have been private. "I would have sent the evidence to Stuart. Let him handle the termination and let your marriage implode naturally." When Tanya discovered the affair and the death. "Tonight's public revelation, that was because you made it personal. I was drunk. I got carried away. You were cruel. There's a difference. Alcohol doesn't create malice. It reveals it." Alexander's voice wasn't angry, just tired. "You could have ignored me tonight, Garrett. I was prepared to sit quietly through dinner, exchange pleasantries, and leave. But you needed to assert dominance to humiliate someone you saw as weak. That was your choice." Tanya stepped forward. "Alexander, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything. We're done, Tanya. This chapter of our lives is closed. The house. We can't afford the mortgage without Garrett's income. The payments are $8,000 a month. Then sell it. Downsize. File for bankruptcy if you need to. Those are your problems now, not mine." Mercedes appeared with coffee. Her timing impeccable. "Tanya. Garrett. I think it's time you left. This is still Christmas, and some of us would like to salvage what's left of the evening." Garrett looked like he wanted to say something more, but Tanya grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. As they left, Alexander heard Tanya's voice crack. "The picture's Garrett. Who is she? How long?" The door closed behind them and the house seemed to exhale. Abby appeared at Alexander's side carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Is it weird that I feel bad for her?" "No, that means you have empathy. That's a good thing. But she was so mean to you." "They both were. People are complicated, sweetheart. Your mother made choices based on what she thought would make her happy. She was wrong, but that doesn't mean she deserves to suffer forever. Natural consequences are enough." Mercedes sat down across from them. Stuart joining her. "Alexander, that was the most dramatic Christmas dinner I've hosted in 47 years. I'm not sure whether to thank you or ban you from future gatherings." "I'll accept either," Alexander said with a slight smile. "What really gets me," Mercedes continued, "is that you've been quietly successful all this time, never bragging, never correcting Tanya's assumptions. Why? Because my success isn't defined by other people's perception of it. I know what I've built, what I've accomplished. I don't need validation from anyone, especially not from people who chose to leave my life." Stuart raised his coffee cup to Alexander Ross, the quietest badass I've ever known. They toasted with coffee cups while snow continued to fall outside. Chapter 8, The Fallout. The week between Christmas and New Year's was a blur of consequences for Garrett and Tanya that Alexander watched from comfortable distance. He didn't actively pursue updates, but information found its way to him regardless. On December 27th, Abby called him. "Dad, Mom's moving out of the new house. They listed it for sale yesterday. She's devastated. How are you handling all of this?" "Honestly, I'm relieved. Garrett was always terrible to her, too. She just couldn't see it. He controlled everything. What she wore, who she talked to, where she spent money. Now that the facade is gone, maybe she'll remember who she used to be. That's a mature perspective. I learned from the best." Abby paused. "Dad, can I ask you something? The algorithm. How did you create it?" Alexander smiled. He'd been wondering when she'd asked. "It's complex, but the core concept is pattern recognition across seemingly unrelated datasets. Most analytics tools look at historical data linearly. Phoenix looks at it dimensionally. It identifies patterns that humans miss because we can't process information in that many dimensions simultaneously. Could you teach me? You want to learn algorithm development? I want to learn from you. The technical stuff I can get, Northwestern, but understanding how to think about problems the way you do, that's something special." Alexander felt warmth spread through his chest. "I'd love that. Why don't you come to the loft tomorrow? I'll show you the original code." "Really? The original Phoenix code? Why not? You're my daughter. Who else would I pass that knowledge to?" After hanging up, Alexander walked to his window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. His phone buzzed with a message from Stuart. "Board meeting today presenting the Garrett Cole situation. Thought you should know. 3 other employees came forward after his termination. You've been taking credit for their work, too. You didn't just catch a fraud. You exposed a systemic problem. Thank you." Alexander didn't reply immediately. Instead, He thought about the path that had led him here. 20 years ago, he'd been a kid at MIT with big dreams and bigger algorithms. He created Phoenix because he saw a problem that needed solving, not for fame or fortune. When Stewart had offered the licensing deal, Alexander had almost turned it down. The money seemed obscene for just doing what he loved. But his lawyer, Raoul, had been insistent. You created something valuable. You deserve to be compensated for that value. So, he'd signed. And his life had changed in ways he never anticipated. The divorce from Tanya had hurt. There was no denying that. But in hindsight, it had freed him. Freed him from constantly explaining himself, from justifying his quiet nature, from feeling like he was never quite enough. He'd build a life on his terms, answerable to no one. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Mr. Ross, this is Robert Frost from the Wall Street Journal. I'm working on a story about intellectual property fraud in the tech sector, and Garrett Cole's case came across my desk. Would you be willing to comment? No comment, Alexander said immediately. I understand you're the creator of the Phoenix algorithm and that Mr. Cole systematically misrepresented your work as his own innovations. This is a bigger story than one man's fraud. It's about how companies protect intellectual property and credit their innovators. Mr. Frost, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not interested in public attention. The matter has been resolved privately. With all due respect, sir, TechCorp's filing suggests they're pursuing similar cases against other employees. Your algorithm has generated billions in value. People should know who created it. Alexander paused. If you write this story, you do it without my participation. I won't confirm or deny anything. Won't provide quotes or interviews. My work speaks for itself. Fair enough. But for what it's worth, Mr. Ross, the tech community should know your name. You've revolutionized predictive analytics, and you've done it while remaining completely under the radar. That's impressive. After the call ended, Alexander sat in thought. Fame had never been his goal. But Abby was right. There was value in people understanding that quiet competence could be more powerful than loud bravado. 3 days later, the Wall Street Journal article published. The headline read, "The Algorithm Genius You've Never Heard of. How Alexander Ross Revolutionized Tech and Exposed a Fraud." The article was thorough but respectful, focusing on Phoenix's technical innovations and its massive financial success without sensationalizing the Garrett situation. It painted Alexander as a reclusive genius who'd built an empire while maintaining complete privacy. Within hours, his LinkedIn profile had 10,000 new connection requests. His email was flooded with interview requests, speaking opportunities, and business proposals. He ignored all of it. Chapter 9, The New Beginning. New Year's Eve found Alexander at his loft with Abby, teaching her the fundamentals of algorithmic thinking. They'd spent the past week going through Phoenix's code with Alexander explaining not just what the code did, but why he made each design choice. The key, he explained, pulling up a particularly complex section, is understanding that computers are literal, but humans are contextual. You have to translate human context into literal instructions, and that requires you to think in both languages simultaneously. Abby was furiously taking notes. This is so much more interesting than my classes. Professor Jenkins just has us memorizing syntax. Syntax is important, but it's just the alphabet. This is learning to write poetry. His phone buzzed. Mercedes family dinner tomorrow for New Year's Day. Just us, you, me, Abby, and Stewart if he's free. No drama, I promise. Alexander smiled and confirmed. At 11:30 p.m., as they were debugging a section of code Abby had written, the building's front desk called up. Mr. Ross, you have a visitor, a Ms. Tanya Callahan. Should I send her up? Alexander and Abby exchanged glances. Give us a minute, Alexander said. Dad, you don't have to see her. I know, but maybe I should. He picked up the phone, sent her up. Tanya looked different. No designer clothes, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like the woman he'd married 20 years ago before the need to compete and impress had consumed her. I'm sorry to just show up, she said quietly. I know I have no right. Come in, Alexander said. They sat in the living room while Abby diplomatically retreated to the study. Through the windows, the Chicago skyline glittered with New Year's preparations. I've been doing a lot of thinking this week, Tanya began. About our marriage, about why I left, about what I was looking for with Garrett. Tanya, you don't owe me explanations. Let me finish, please. She took a breath. I left because I thought you were too passive, too content with enough. I wanted excitement, ambition, someone who fought for things. And when I met Garrett, he seemed like everything you weren't. Aggressive, ambitious, always pushing for more. I know you told me this 3 years ago, but I was wrong about what those qualities meant. Garrett wasn't ambitious. He was desperate. He wasn't confident. He was insecure and compensating. And he wasn't fighting for anything real. He was just fighting to seem important. Alexander said nothing, letting her continue. You were never passive, Alexander. You were strategic. You were never content with enough. You just didn't need to broadcast your success to feel validated. Everything I criticized you for was actually strength. And I was too stupid to see it. You weren't stupid. You wanted different things. That's allowed. I humiliated you. For 3 years, I made you the punchline of my success story. I let Garrett treat you terribly. I laughed when he threw wine in your face. Tears were streaming down her cheeks now. And you could have destroyed me at any point. You could have told everyone about your success, made me look like a fool. But you didn't. Why? Because proving you wrong wouldn't have made me happy. Being successful and secure in who I am. That's what makes me happy. Your opinion of me stopped matching the day you left. Tanya flinched as if struck. God, that's brutal. It's honest. Tanya, I don't hate you. I don't wish bad things for you, but I also don't need your validation or your apology. I've moved on. Garrett and I are getting divorced. I caught him with fate 2 days ago. He'd been planning to leave me once he got the VP promotion. He just wanted to use my credit to secure the house first. I'm sorry you're going through that. Are you really? Alexander considered. Yes. Not because I want you back or because I'm enjoying your pain, but because I remember the woman I married and she deserved better than Garrett Cole. I hope you find that again someday. Tanya laughed bitterly. The woman you married was already turning into the woman who left you. Maybe this is what I deserve. Nobody deserves to be cheated on and used. Learn from it and do better next time. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Tanya stood. Thank you for seeing me. And Alexander, I really am sorry for all of it. I know. Take care of yourself, Tanya. After she left, Abby emerged from the study. That was big of you, Dad. Being kind to her after everything. Holding on to anger takes energy, and I'd rather use that energy for something productive. Besides, I have everything I need right here. My work, my daughter, my peace of mind. Why would I waste time on bitterness? At midnight, they watched fireworks explode over the city, ringing in the new year. Alexander's phone lit up with messages. Stoyart, Happy New Year to the smartest person I know. Don't ever change, Mercedes. To new beginnings and old victories. See you tomorrow, Raul. 3 new licensing inquiries for Phoenix. We're going to have a very profitable year. Happy New Year, Alex. Abby raised her glass of sparkling cider. To my dad, the badass who taught me that real power doesn't need to be loud. Alexander clinked his glass against hers. To being true to yourself, no matter what anyone else thinks. As fireworks continued to light up the sky, Alexander reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He'd built an algorithm that changed an industry, amassed a fortune that gave him freedom, and navigated betrayal with dignity and strategic precision. But more than any of that, he taught his daughter that success isn't measured by others' opinions. It's measured by your own integrity and peace of mind. Garrett Cole had tried to humiliate him at a Christmas dinner to make him feel small in front of his family. Instead, he'd triggered his own complete destruction while Alexander remained standing unshaken, stronger than ever. The algorithm of revenge, Alexander thought, wasn't about destruction. It was about revelation. He hadn't destroyed Garrett. He'd simply revealed who Garrett truly was and let natural consequences do the rest. That was the beauty of real power. It didn't need to be cruel or vindictive. It just needed to be patient and precise. As the last fireworks faded, Alexander looked at his daughter, brilliant, kind, learning to code with the same passion he'd had at her age, and realized that this was his real victory. Not the money, not the satisfaction of watching Garrett fall, but this moment right here, passing on knowledge, building something that would outlast him, showing Abby that quiet strength could move mountains. The Phoenix algorithm had revolutionized an industry. But the greatest algorithm Alexander Ross had ever created was the one for living well. Stay true to yourself. Build on solid foundations. Let your work speak for itself and remember that revenge is best served with patience and precision. In the window's reflection, he caught sight of himself. Successful, content, at peace. Garrett had called him a broke loser. Tanya had pitted him. They'd both been so wrong. It was almost funny. Almost. Alexander smiled, raised his glass to the skyline, and stepped into the new year with his daughter beside him and his future bright before him. The algorithm had worked perfectly. The variables had been controlled. The outcome was optimal. Victory, he thought, had never tasted sweeter. And there you have it.